The best thing I can give you is once the eyeball was penetrated with the ink, it felt like he grabbed 10 shards of glass and rubbed it in my eye.
Some tattoos are meant to say something, but sometimes what they end up saying is everything went wrong. Whether it's the person who asked for 3 little stars and woke up looking like a constellation, or the one who boldly inked crime pays on their forehead only to find out, very quickly, that it doesn't. These are the stories of when face tattoos go wrong. Number 16. Paul Terry. Most people involved in sketchy activity try to blend in to avoid law enforcement heat, disappear into the background, or at least avoid drawing attention to themselves. But Paul Terry? He did the exact opposite. This man basically turned his own face into a walking billboard of bad decisions, starting with the words F cops boldly tattooed across his forehead. If that wasn't enough, his face was also decorated with devil horns, a bright red lipstick kiss on his cheek, and an assortment of other unmistakable tattoos that made him instantly recognizable. So when Paul and his partner, Sonia Marie Morrow, decided to rob her ex-boyfriend in Tulsa, Oklahoma, identifying the culprit wasn't exactly a challenge for the authorities on the case. According to reports, the two burst into the man's home armed with a knife. Paul stood there, demanding money, while Sonia reportedly pressured her ex even further. The victim handed over his wallet, but that wasn't enough. Sonia kept pushing, trying to get more out of him. Things only de-escalated when the ex threatened to call the police. That's when the pair finally made their exit. But instead of laying low after an armed robbery, Paul kept walking around town like nothing happened, flaunting a face full of loud, aggressive ink that practically screamed, "Arrest me." With such unique facial markings, it didn't take long for law enforcement to connect the dots. Once the victim gave a description, it was game over. Paul Terry was as easy to track as a blinking neon sign, and in the end, his own tattoos made sure there was nowhere to hide. But this next case showed what happens when the ink on someone's face ends up making more headlines than the actual crime. Number 15. William Bottoms Jr. William Bottoms Jr. didn't just have a criminal record, he wore it on his face. His mugshots told a story of their own, each one more inked up than the last, like a visual timeline of escalating choices. By the time he stood trial, his face was nearly unrecognizable beneath the layers of tattoos. There were devil horns tattooed on his forehead, skull patterns etched across his skin, and various symbols that seemed to multiply with each arrest. Even his own defense team admitted it. They were concerned the jury wouldn't be able to separate the man from the markings, but no amount of ink could distract from what actually happened. In Louisiana, back in 2017, 2 men were discovered unalived in the back seat of an abandoned car. A blanket had been thrown over their remains, as if that would somehow hide what had taken place. The scene was chilling, and the evidence pointed straight to Bottoms. The case cracked open when his girlfriend at the time, Megan Gaylord, came forward. She didn't just know what happened, she was there. According to her testimony, the night had started off slowly, but things spiraled fast. Bottoms allegedly snapped, pulled a gun, and unalived both men. Her account of that night was graphic, detailed, and devastating. In the end, her testimony became one of the most damning pieces of evidence presented in court. But the case didn't just stop with William. His identical twin brother was already on police radar for weapons-related charges. The two shared not just DNA, but a reputation and a tendency to stay in trouble. When officers eventually caught up with his brother during an attempted arrest, things escalated fast. He reportedly pulled a gun, and the police responded with gunfire. He didn't survive. In court, William faced the consequences alone, but the chaos surrounding him made it clear. This wasn't just a one-time crime. It was the culmination of a life steeped in violence, addiction, and decisions that left a permanent mark on his face and in the courtroom. But sometimes, cops crack a case with solid investigation. Other times, the suspect practically hands them the evidence on his own forehead. That's exactly what happened with Donald Murray. Number 14. Donald Murray. Donald Murray thought tattooing the words "crime pays" across his face was clever until he proved the opposite by getting arrested. Police in Terre Haute, Indiana chased him down after he allegedly stole a car and took off. But let's be real. How far did he think he'd get with that tattoo screaming irony at every red light? And this wasn't his first headline moment either. Donald had already made an appearance on Live PD the year before, after leading cops on another wild chase that ended with a crash into a tree and an unsuccessful escape on foot. He wasn't exactly a criminal mastermind. He ended up facing a laundry list of charges: auto theft, reckless driving, resisting arrest, and meth possession, and sitting in jail on a $15,000 bond. Given his track record, that might actually be a bargain. Number 13. Grace Wiseman. Freckles are trendy. People love that soft, natural glow they give off. But artificial freckles? That's risky business, especially when the wrong person holds the needle. Grace Wiseman learned the hard way after paying just £50 for a cosmetic tattoo artist, fresh out of certification, to add some natural dots to her face. The result was a mess. Instead of subtle enhancements, she ended up with harsh, blotchy marks that looked more like permanent ink splatters than sun-kissed skin. When she saw the results, it was devastating. What was meant to be a cute boost turned into a full-blown beauty disaster. And no, you can't just wash it off. Luckily, a skilled tattoo correction artist stepped in with a non-laser method to slowly undo the damage. But it's a long, tedious process, and one that comes with a big lesson. Sometimes, that low price tag comes with a bigger cost. Number 12. Kimberly Vlemink.
Teenage girl with 56 stars tattooed on her face is admitting that she lied about falling asleep during the process.
This one sounds like urban legend material, but it's real. Imagine you walked into a tattoo shop expecting something minimal, maybe 3 tiny stars near your eye. That's exactly what Kimberly Vlemink thought she was getting. But by the end of it, her face was covered in 56 stars. How does that even happen? Did she misunderstand? Did the artist freestyle a constellation on her cheeks? Her first explanation was that she had nodded off during the session. According to her, she was asleep while the needle buzzed across her face and woke up to what looked like a star map explosion. But here's where it gets messy. The tattoo artist pushed back hard. He said she was wide awake the entire time and knew exactly what was happening. And to back it up, there's actual footage of her smiling and admiring her new ink right after the session. So what made her suddenly regret it? Her parents were not having it, and as soon as her dad saw her new look, things hit the fan.
But she told the London Telegraph that she lied about falling asleep because her father was furious with her.
And that's when the whole unconscious story popped up. Face tattoos are risky, but eyeball tattoos? That's a whole other level. And for Anaya Peterson, it might have cost her sight. Number 11. Anaya Peterson. At 32, this Belfast law student decided to push the boundaries of body art by getting the whites of her eyes tattooed. But instead of a unique look, she walked into a medical nightmare. Anaya had seen others try it, especially an Australian model who famously had her eyes dyed blue and temporarily lost vision. That recovery gave Anaya confidence. Too much, maybe.
Is Amber Luke. Luke's own tattooed eyes inspired Peterson to try out the look.
In July 2020, she had her right eye tattooed blue, some irritation, a few headaches, but nothing alarming. So in December, she went ahead with the left eye, this time opting for purple. Within months, things took a serious turn. By August of the following year, she woke up unable to open her eyes. Her lids were swollen shut, and the pain was intense. Doctors rushed her onto an IV as they scrambled to figure out how much damage had been done. Floaters started appearing in her vision, and seeing faces from a distance became a struggle. The worst part is that there's no reversing it. Unlike ink on skin, you can't laser pigment out of the eye. Once it's in there, that's it. With face tattoos, there's going on impulse, and then there's what Mike Jams did. Number 10. Mike Jams. The Colombian influencer had one too many feelings after Argentina's World Cup win and decided to put his admiration front and center. Literally, he got Messi's name tattooed across his forehead in huge letters. And to top it off, 3 stars on one cheek to mark Argentina's trio of titles, and the word Dios inked on the other. It was a full-face tribute, and for a brief moment he thought it was genius. For about 2 weeks, Mike was loving the attention, posting videos, smiling at the camera, acting like he made the ultimate fan move. But then the hype faded, and reality kicked in. He went public about his regret, saying he wished he'd never done it, and social media didn't hold back either.
Mensajes negativos, la gente me juzgaba y hasta me amenazaba por un tatuaje que hoy en día ustedes saben que es falso.
But just when you thought public regret was the peak of bad tattoo decisions, this next guy didn't just make himself unforgettable, he practically handed law enforcement a GPS. Number 9. Cody Keenan. Some fugitives hide out. Others might change their look. But Cody Keenan? He's running around with Mighty Mongrel Mob tattooed boldly across his face. At 28, Keenan's already been in and out of trouble, and with the tattoo, he set out on the run again. Watto police quickly began searching for him, but with that kind of ink, he's not exactly difficult to spot. His face is practically doing the police's job. And here's the thing, a face tattoo is already a heavy commitment, but marking yourself with a gang name? That follows you everywhere. On the street, in court, during a job interview, even just walking into a store. Even if he wanted to lay low, that tattoo makes sure he never really disappears. But just as one man's ink made hiding impossible, Sam Piper took things in a different direction. Copying a tattoo so iconic, it was bound to draw attention. Number 8. Sam Piper. Sam Piper had always been drawn to tattoos. The art, the attitude, the identity they carried. By the time he hit his late 20s, his body was already a canvas of birds, names, flames, and symbols that told little pieces of his life story. But something about his latest idea pushed things into a whole new territory. He wanted a face tattoo. Not just any face tattoo. A copy of Mike Tyson's legendary ink.
If I see tattoos on that face, I'm like, oh, because I don't feel my tattoo.
No.
The bold tribal design that curved across Tyson's face was instantly recognizable, and Sam thought it'd give his own ink collection an edge. The problem? He didn't think it all the way through. Sam wasn't a boxer. He wasn't even particularly interested in Tyson as a person. He just thought the tattoo looked cool, like something that would set him apart. And he was right about that, but not in the way he hoped. When he pitched the idea to tattoo artists around his area, they weren't impressed.
You know, for years, most tattoo artists would never tattoo a guy's face. A lot of them will not do it.
5 different shops turned him away flat out. Some tried to talk him out of it. Others just shook their heads. They knew exactly what that kind of tattoo meant out in the real world, and they didn't want any part of it. But Sam didn't take the hint. Instead of reflecting, he took the rejections as a challenge. Eventually, he found someone willing to do the work. A less experienced artist maybe, or just someone who didn't ask too many questions. Either way, Sam finally got what he asked for. A striking design inked across his face, wrapping from his temple down toward his cheek, just like Tyson's. The regret kicked in before the redness even faded. The tattoo didn't just change how he looked, it changed how people treated him.
Well, I wanted to get a tattoo, and while I was inebriated, you know that word, kiddo?
The second he stepped outside, he could feel it. Strangers stared too long. Some turned away completely. Others looked nervous or uneasy when they passed him on the street. Even the police took notice, pulling him over more frequently than ever before. He hadn't committed a crime, but the tattoo made people assume he might. What had started as an aesthetic decision was now wrecking his social life, his job prospects, and his sense of self. Sam tried to brush it off at first, but over time, the reality set in. This one piece of ink had pushed him into a version of himself he never wanted to be. He eventually made the tough call to start laser removal. But if getting the tattoo took less than an hour, removing it would take close to 2 years, dozens of painful sessions, and a serious hit to his wallet. There was no shortcut, just a slow, drawn-out process to erase a split-second decision. Imagine getting a tattoo so bold that it paints you as an immediate suspect, blocks you from ever being taken seriously, or even landing a job. That's exactly what was about to happen to Mark Kropp. Number 7. Mark Kropp. The 19-year-old from New Zealand, whose colossal Devast 8 tattoo across his jawline turned him into an internet sensation, but not the good kind. Raised without parents, surrounded by bad role models and alcohol, and kicked out of school at 11, Mark's early life was anything but easy. By 17, he was on the verge of becoming a father, but instead of seeking a legitimate job, he resorted to robbing a tourist at knife point over a minor dispute. That landed him 2 years in prison. Now, what would drive a young man to get a tattoo like that? While locked up, Mark and his brother decided to get drunk off homemade alcohol and thought getting a small tattoo would be a fun idea.
I was serving a 2-year, 3-month sentence in prison for an aggravated robbery charge.
But things quickly spiraled out of control, and before he knew it, Mark's jawline was permanently inked with the word Devast8 in bold black letters, his street name. Now picture this. You've just served your time, you're trying to get your life back on track, but you've got a tattoo that says Devast8 etched across your face. Nobody was going to hire him. Mark was determined to turn his life around, find work, support his girlfriend, and reunite with their child. But that tattoo was a major roadblock. So, he turned to Facebook, posting in a job group about how his tattoo was ruining his chances at employment.
I was applying to a few things on Facebook and I thought, oh, actually I shouldn't have to let my facial tattoo hold me back, and that's when I took the selfie.
To his surprise, the post went viral. Some people were sympathetic, but it wasn't just sympathy that Mark received. A scaffolding boss named Jizzarina saw potential in him and offered him a job on the spot. Soon after, other employers reached out, offering work in concrete cutting, security, and general labor. One woman even offered to supply him with all the gear he'd need to start fresh. Mark's story was about redemption, a second chance after a reckless decision that nearly derailed his life. But this next case is not about second chances. It's about a night gone so wrong, the regret would be written all over his face. Number 6. Edward Murray. Edward Murray was a 34-year-old laborer from the United Kingdom whose night of heavy drinking turned into a lifelong lesson in trust and alcohol limits. It all started at a house party in Northamptonshire. Edward was tossing back drinks like there was no tomorrow. He blacked out for 4 or 5 hours, completely unaware of the chaos unfolding around him. By the time he woke up, he was groggy, confused, and probably dealing with a pounding headache. But the real hit came when he looked in the mirror. There, staring back at him, wasn't just his own reflection, but a crude, explicit tattoo of male genitalia drawn across his forehead. To make it worse, the word nons was inked alongside it, an extremely serious insult in the UK, often used as a slur with disturbing implications. Still dazed, Edward stumbled back downstairs, only to find everyone at the party cracking up. Apparently, he'd asked for the tattoo himself. Whether that was true or just a cruel joke, one thing was clear. He had no memory of agreeing to it. And really, would anyone, even at their drunkest, ask for something like that? Edward knew he couldn't walk around like that forever. The damage was done, but he needed to salvage what he could. Eventually, he got it covered up with a skull and crossbones. Definitely more intimidating than humiliating, though probably still not what he imagined he'd be wearing on his face when he woke up that morning. Edward's story was a brutal wake-up call about what happens when jokes go too far. But the next brutal tattoo job started with a beauty appointment and ended in a nightmare every time Jamie Ledbetter looked in the mirror. Number 5. Jamie Ledbetter. We've all had our share of bad beauty days. Maybe a haircut that didn't quite suit your face, or a brow wax that went a little too thin. But for Jamie Ledbetter, the aftermath of one beauty appointment turned into a full-blown disaster that stayed with her every single time she looked in the mirror. Jamie, a 42-year-old woman from Missouri, was just looking for a small glow-up. She wanted fuller, more defined eyebrows and booked a session with someone claiming to be a certified microblading artist.
Jamie Ledbetter wanted fuller eyebrows. In November, she went to a woman who claimed to be certified in microblading.
Microblading, in theory, is a semi-permanent makeup procedure where delicate strokes are tattooed onto the skin to mimic real eyebrow hairs. When it's done right, the results can be flawless. But instead of sleek, natural-looking brows, Jamie ended up with thick, uneven, overly arched lines that gave her the look of someone permanently frozen in a state of panic. No matter how she applied makeup, there was no covering it up. Her brows were too dark, too high, and way too dramatic. As if that wasn't humiliating enough, her relationship didn't survive the transformation either. The man she was dating actually broke up with her after seeing her new brows. She spent months trying to find someone who could fix the mess. But correcting a botched microblading job isn't as easy as slapping on more ink.
Microblading is a semi-permanent procedure to make eyebrows look fuller, and thousands of women do it safely every year.
It takes skill and patience. Eventually, she met Cara Gutierrez, a professional known for tattoo removal and permanent cosmetic correction. Cara used a special pigment lightening solution called Lift, which involved tattooing over the original ink to help break it down and fade it away. It took multiple sessions, a lot of emotional grit, and over $1,000 to even begin reversing the damage. Jamie's story was a painful lesson in how a small beauty decision can spiral into something life-altering. But what happens when it's not just one bad choice, when it becomes a full-blown obsession inked across your entire face? Number 4. Melissa Sloan. Tattoos can be personal, meaningful, even empowering. But for Melissa Sloan, they became something else entirely. The 45-year-old mother from Wales spent years turning her body into a living canvas, layering ink over every inch of skin, including her entire face. But this isn't just self-expression. Melissa openly says she's addicted to getting tattoos, and it's come at a serious cost. Her ink-covered appearance has made it nearly impossible for her to land a job. Employers take one look and decide she's not what they're looking for. No interview, no conversation, just instant rejection. Melissa doesn't deny it. She's heard it too many times to count. Still, the tattoos keep coming.
From Wales, and I'm 46, and I love tattoos, and I can't stop having tattoos done because
Melissa gets inked up to 3 times a week, not in a professional parlor, but at home, or sometimes even in her car. She actually carries a tattoo machine with her, just in case the mood strikes. And the person responsible for most of the work? Her boyfriend. He's not licensed, but he's been tattooing for years, giving Melissa what she calls prison-style ink. She's covered old tattoos with new ones more times than she can remember, not because she didn't like them, but because the high she gets from the needle keeps her going. For her, tattooing isn't about aesthetics anymore. It's about that adrenaline hit, that sense of transformation. Yet, despite the setbacks, she says she has no plans to stop. For Melissa, this is who she is, even if the world can't look past it. But sometimes reclaiming control can become the very thing that takes it all away. Number 3. Xiaolong. When Xiaolong got his first tattoo, he didn't see it as a mistake. At 24, the Chinese native had been through a tough time and saw body art as a way to reclaim some control. But what started as a coping mechanism quickly became a commitment he couldn't escape. In 2018, Xiaolong went all in. He covered his body in ink, not just his arms and torso, but his face, neck, and even the whites of his eyes. The boldest of them all was a large skull tattoo stretched across his entire face, giving him a look straight out of a horror film. At the time, it felt right. Now he says it's the biggest regret of his life. In China, tattoos are still highly stigmatized. While the West has embraced body art in fashion and media, Chinese culture remains conservative. With his look, Xiaolong became a walking target. Strangers insulted him. Facial recognition systems wouldn't even register his features. And when it came to finding a job, not a chance. Employers saw the ink before they saw him. After years of being shut out, he finally made a painful decision. He began the process of laser tattoo removal. The treatments were brutal, so painful that he had to take breaks between sessions just to let his skin heal. And it wasn't cheap either. Removing a tattoo, especially one this large and dark, is a slow and expensive journey. Still, Xiaolong is pushing forward. He wants to rebuild his life without the face that kept holding him back. But the scars, emotional and physical, run deep. His story is a powerful reminder. The things we do to survive a hard moment can end up defining us long after that moment has passed. The next story, however, is even more complex. When tattoos once meant everything, but now stand as a reminder of what you've left behind. Number 2. Sarah Mills. Not every tattoo story ends with pride. For Sarah Mills, tattoos were once a form of empowerment, a way to push back against expectations she never asked to carry.
Has been fairly heavily tattooed for about a decade now.
But today, the 36-year-old finds herself living with permanent reminders of a version of herself she no longer recognizes. Sarah's body is covered in carefully curated ink. Each piece was custom designed, expensive, and chosen with intent. Her tattoos are a symbol of rebellion from her youth, spread across her body like declarations. In her 20s, she was pushing against the image people had of her, that of a stereotypical housewife with predictable dreams and a quiet demeanor. She wanted to be seen as strong, independent, and impossible to categorize. Tattoos became her shield, her way of rewriting the narrative. But time changes people. These days, Sarah's world looks very different. She's traded rebellion for quiet hobbies, antique collecting, nature walks, softer aesthetics. The bold tattoos that once matched her mindset now feel like echoes of someone else's life. And beyond the personal disconnect, the ink has cost her professionally. As a model, actor, and influencer, she's lost gigs because brands thought her chest tattoo was too distracting. Even when she did get work, the tattoos were digitally removed. It was as if parts of her were being erased to fit someone else's idea of marketable beauty. When she shared her regrets publicly, Sarah expected support, but instead, she was accused of being fake. People said she was never truly committed to the lifestyle, but Sarah lived that life for nearly 20 years. If she wasn't real about it, who is? She's not rushing to erase the ink. Removal is expensive, painful, and slow.
I am at Atlantic Laser Tattoo Removal, about to get my second session done.
For now, she's choosing to live with it. Some days she doesn't notice it at all. Other days, strangers do. And when they make snap judgments about who she is based on how she looks, that's when it stings. But the story behind Luke Williams is different. He doesn't regret his decisions and stands firm, even when the world keeps trying to make him apologize for it. Number 1. Luke Williams. Luke Morrison. Williams isn't who you expect. At 47, he's a recovery worker who spent 2 decades helping people get clean, escape homelessness, and rebuild their lives. He's also a father, but the first thing people see isn't his compassion or his credentials. It's the bold tattoo on his face. Luke got the ink in 2009. At age 32, he knew it would attract attention, but he wasn't prepared for how intense the public reaction would be. Whether he's shopping for groceries or walking into a meeting, he can feel the stares. He's been mistaken for a criminal, denied entry to clinics, and constantly forced to explain himself. What most people don't realize is that his tattoo actually helps him in his work. His clients, many of whom are battling addiction, see him as someone who gets it, someone who's been through it, not just preaching from the sidelines. His appearance breaks down walls that would take others months to get past. Still, society doesn't always see nuance. Some see ink and assume danger. Others treat him like a cautionary tale. And in the professional world, that bias runs deep. Luke has had to prove over and over that he's not just employable, he's essential. For Luke, his tattoo isn't about rebellion, it's about ownership. He stands by his decision, even though it's made his path more complicated. Because while the ink may be permanent, so is the work he's doing to help others. And if his face tattoo keeps one person from judging themselves too harshly or encourages them to accept who they are, then he says it's worth it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.